Good morning, it's Brigid, and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. It's Saturday morning, okay? I almost woke up late today. I woke up and I thought that I thought I'm going to end up sleeping right through this because I only tend to get really, really tired at around 4:30. Like I might wake up in the middle of the night and feel not entirely awake, but I often feel like I have a moment where like a cortisol moment or something. I wake up and then by this time I'm like really exhausted and I kind of fall back to sleep. But I was like, get up. Just kind of pushed myself out of bed to get up because then I figured it's Saturday. For me, Saturday is a work day. For a lot of people, they're Monday to Friday. For me, Saturday and Sunday are work days. Usually if I'm going to take a day off, it's going to be Monday or Tuesday. Tuesdays pretty regularly, but those are the days that I don't work. But anyway, those of you who are up and who want to join me on a Saturday morning, many of you might be sleeping in, so that's of course all fair enough. And I still haven't put that poll up yet. Yesterday I had quite a bit of stuff to get done. I had some stuff that I'm selling on eBay that I had to get. I think I've mentioned that I have my Edward Gorey collection for sale. Maybe I only mentioned it on the podcast channel, Katonia podcast channel, but I have it on eBay. That's my kind of Edward Gorey. If you're not familiar with him, he has a lot of macabre humor, and he illustrated probably most children's books that you would have seen back in like the 70s, 60s, even up to I think he died in the year 2000. So but even after that, they were releasing more and more of his stuff. His images are on everything. He really got to be famous in the 80s. There was a PBS television show called Mystery, where they had this intro, this kind of weird little mystery intro. But the animation and the illustration was done by Edward Gorey. So then he became like a staple of, public broadcasting system, PBS, as well. And he was real kind of a strange kind of a dude. He was definitely eccentric. In his own way, but his actual cartoon books. I remember the first time I was working for a book distributor and I was doing cataloging. When I say cataloging, I mean library cataloging, not like making like catalogs of books. Like cataloging is the records that go into a library system. And I had another librarian working next to me. And we were talking about children's cataloging, and she had said to me, "Oh my God," she says, "there's this book I had to catalog." She said, "I was absolutely horrified because it was about these colorful bugs, and they all played together, and then the big black bug came, and then he broke up all their parties and scared them, and then they pushed him over a cliff and dropped a rock on him." And she says, "What a horrible message that sends." I'm listening, and I'm thinking, that sounds like an Edward Gorey cartoon. And sure enough, it's the one called The Bug Book. But that was his sense of humor. Like he has the hapless child, he has the loathsome couple, the Gashly Crumb Tinies, little alphabets of, all these different ways the children died horribly and things like that. It's macabre, but it's meant to have this kind of gothic feel to it. And some people don't like that, but it's just, I don't know, he just has a style of doing that, and he illustrated a lot of my favorite books. So I was a big fan of Gorey for a long time. And as he pointed out, a lot of times these horrible cartoons were actually his cartoon representations of something that had actually happened, like actual murder cases or actual. I think the hapless child, he said, is just like his satire on like the poor Victorian waif novel. He has a lot of everything that he does is satire, and it's very easy to misread him very very literally. But I've always found his stuff to be absolutely, like, a lot of it's hilarious. But it's at a time where I'm keeping my collections of his stuff and I'm selling off everything else. So anyway, eBaying, getting rid of stuff, and also just getting grades finished for my students and working on a few other things yesterday. I feel like I had a long list of things that I'm doing, and one day kind of blends into the next. So anyway, enough about me and what was going on. Today, what I wanted to talk about was something that came up this week, is the idea of burdens and being overburdened. Okay. Now, when we a lot of times, something that's certainly valued in what we'll call European/American culture. although I think in a lot of ways it's much more extreme in America anyway, is the culture of, well, first of all, being independent, okay, which again there's nothing wrong with being independent, obviously all of us grow up to be independent adults, we hope, right? So there's nothing wrong with independence, but there seems to be a stigma attached to looking for help or looking for support. There's this thing of there's an equivalence of strength with doing it all by myself. Okay, and a lot of times we do things because we live in a value system that tells us we must be productive all the time. We have to be little worker bees. We have to be productive all the time, doing something every minute of the day. Otherwise, we're lazy and shiftless and, whatever other things that we kind of get out of the culture. The way in which, and a lot of times when people have downtime, when you have, let's just say, a legitimate vacation or holiday, how many people do you know, especially people who work for corporations, will be sitting like on the beach somewhere with their laptop open or their phone still working because they don't let go of it. Or there's definitely a sense here of feeling like people need to take everything on to prove that they are competent, to prove that they are productive, and to a certain degree, there is a certain amount of, and I don't mean this in a negative way because I don't think this is something people do consciously, but a lot of times there is a certain amount of ego behind it, like, I can do it, I'm a tough guy, I can do it, or I'm a tough woman, I can do it, whatever the situation is. And I think almost to prove that we are self-sufficient and that we are not, that I can handle it all. However, something, and okay, just to back up a little bit, I definitely was one of those people. I had been married, as I'd indicated in the past, and I wasn't married to somebody who actually, let's just say he wasn't particularly ambitious, okay? And I found that I was the person, and the thing is, he knew that I was a very ambitious person. I had a lot of goals. I have a lot of dreams. I still do now. It's like I'm a person who is, in human design terms, I'm what they call a manifesting generator. I'm like, I move all the time. And my mind is always working because I always want to do stuff. That's why I'm doing these live streams. I'm like, hey, this is great. Why don't I talk to people in the morning? I like to be busy. And there's nothing wrong with being busy with something, okay? Or being occupied with something that you enjoy. But the problem is a lot of the times it's just more like we feel like the mythology I could relate it to would be that of Atlas. Atlas is the Titan who is a giant who is forced to take the world on his shoulders. So his job, in theory, is to, obviously, we know differently, but just mythologically, he holds the entire world on his shoulders. And that is something that we do. If you go to a massage therapist and you have your back done and whatever, frequently you will find that a lot of your pain and energy is in the shoulders. That's where the difficulty is. And really, almost symbolically, that's where all your weight is. It comes from things like, staring at a computer screen or leaning. As I'm talking to you, I feel like I'm not leaning back, I'm leaning forward. There's this whole, there's a way that we behave, but it's almost like we're always under the yoke, okay? We'll see the oxen under the yoke. We're always in this position of carrying a burden. Now, this can happen for men or women. It's not, although a lot of times, especially if you think about the old paradigm of women being the ones home doing the housework and the men being the one, probably starting with the men being out in the fields or hunting or whatever, and the women perhaps, at least certainly this is a 19th century concept, is the idea that the woman is the one who's kind of responsible for the home space. Whether if she's a privileged woman, then she would have a staff to do it for her, and she was the person running the house and telling the staff what to do. If she was not a person of that kind of means, then she would be doing all that work herself. And so there's this kind of role thing that we've been, again, trying to break out of, certainly in the 21st century. But what tended to happen, what happened in the 70s when you had this idea of women's lib, okay? When you had the idea that women because really it was a very necessary thing, because up until that time, women had to, you couldn't do anything by yourself. You couldn't have a bank account by yourself. You couldn't have a credit card by yourself. Your husband or your father or a parent had to sign off on it for you. And and people don't really remember that was how it was. And the whole idea was there that no, women should have the right to, women should not be expected to have to just stay home and raise a family. But that was always the expectation. That was the expectation, like I said, I was raised with. And of course I never did that. But the idea was that but once women basically started going to work and doing the same kind of work that men did, but certain things did not shift. So there became this idea that, okay, not only are you supposed to work, you're also supposed to, all the things that you did in terms of keeping house or watching children or whatever is still part of your job. Because frequently I don't know too many households where the woman can just stay home and take care of things. But that was always an issue. Like with the book that came out in the 50s, The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, she talks about that. The woman who is college educated in a lot of cases, and that was the joke back then. She was going for her MRS, just really going to college so she could meet a guy and get married. And again, not everybody went to college. A lot of women did not go to college, okay? I'm the only person in my family to go to college or university. So not everybody does. But the idea was, so you have this educated woman who's now just home with babies all day. And she's just kind of, that's supposed to be her ideal life. And the reality is that it's not. I mean, that she has something else to offer besides her uterus to different situations. And again, it's not to downplay women who do have children. Having children is a huge responsibility. It's a huge task. It's a lot of work to have kids. I mean, to make the decision to do that is a huge decision. It's a huge life-changing decision. But for a lot of women, that's not the choice that they make. But the expectation was, if you were a woman who had children, it was almost like, okay, to make money, you also had to work. So now you're doing two jobs. And even though in theory, the male half of the equation, the spouse, I mean, again, in talking these sort of traditional family type things, what people consider traditional, a lot of times the men just don't. I remember when I was living overseas, I remember somebody talking to me about their children and about their grandchildren, and they were talking about their son making a comment of, oh, it's my turn to babysit the kids this weekend. And she goes, what do you mean babysit? They're yours. They're yours. They're not, it's not like, you're somebody else's kids are coming over, but the man still has this expectation that that's the woman's job. Point being is that the reason I say especially women on this is because women frequently are expected to take on a whole lot of stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that men can't either, because a lot of times men seem to feel that they have to work 80 hours a week or whatever to keep up or to show that they can manage things all by themselves. Because in addition to the idea of I can be Atlas and I can carry the world on my shoulders, it's also the idea of I'm a lone wolf. I can do it on my own. I don't need help. And I've pointed out that this is another one of those unconscious ways in which we devalue what I call the feminine in an archetypal sense. Because the feminine is about the collective. The feminine is about sharing. People who get very, very up in arms about socialism, people who are very, again, socialism is an economic system like anything. It can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. Capitalism is an economic system, can be a good thing or a bad thing. It all depends on its context and how it's being used and how maybe it's being managed, who's managing it, and frequently that's the problem, is who's managing it. But the idea is that when you are in a social, the idea is that things are supposed to be collective. People help each other. People are supposed to work together. And that in the kind of economic environment that we're in, which is liberating in some ways, can actually be now burdens us with the task that now we have to work constantly all the time, even when we're doing our own thing, that you're not, it's not really acceptable to say that you need help. And now the cards connected to this, I pulled a few of these, is the Ten of Wands card, okay? This is a traditional Rider-Waite one. And as we can see, there's a guy here who is carrying all of these wands or these staves. And if you can see, as I was saying, the back is bent over. You know, this is somebody who feels that they have to carry it. Now, people interpret this card in different ways. Some people will say, oh, well, this card is about the ways in which we can, you know, like they'll say, some people have pointed out that, well, he's almost to the village here, so maybe he's almost reached his destination where he can put the staves down. Okay, so some people interpret it that way. So oftentimes this card may indicate, you know, you're, okay, you can interpret it as a card of saying you're carrying too much of a burden. Some people say it's a card that's saying you're about to lay down your burden. I tend to see this, when this card comes up in a reading for somebody who has been very stressed out in crisis, I'm like, yeah, you're trying to carry the world on your shoulders. There really should be a Ten of Wands card that shows Atlas, honestly. The idea of carrying that whole world on your shoulders. There's also another spin to this, which is a little bit what I'm talking about here. And the Tarot Oscura, which is made by Estelle Riviera, she does, it's one of my favorite decks. It's not a deck I can use too often on live readings and stuff, because the imagery on it is intense. If you're easily shocked by stuff, that may not be the deck for you, but I love this deck because I don't mind, because I feel like that kind of shocking imagery brings out certain aspects of the cards that we sometimes downplay. And this is her Ten of Wands, okay? And the character here, though, as opposed to this guy who is carrying it in front of him, this guy is like right here, like this. And there's this, you know, he's got these teeth showing. There's like a gritted determination. And as another reader who I'm friends with had pointed out, she had said, yeah, you notice that the determination in this face is somebody, it's literally, it's not just about, I have a big burden to carry. It's also part of my identity. You know, it's like, I'm gritting my teeth. I'm determined to carry this weight because my pride is attached to it, or my sense of who I am is attached to carrying this burden around. And people don't like to hear the word pride because they say, well, it's not, some people just say, I'm just overworked and it's not a matter of ego. And that's true. Not everybody, sometimes people are carrying all this stuff and it's not intentional. I carry a lot, and I would love to hire a staff to do all my stuff for me, but, you know, and that's the way a lot of people are who run their own business. You know, you can't, you don't have the money to employ all of these different people. I think that's why a lot of people try to turn to AI for certain things, because they say, well, you know, that's a cheap and free way that's part of something for something else to do a piece for me so that I don't have to do it. Like a lot of people want to do that for their marketing and for different things. But there's also certain things that people want to control all the time. And in our favorite Osho Zen deck, this is shown as the card of suppression, okay? This is that your energy that's kind of being, this deck views it as your energy is being tamped down. And the reason that your energy is tamped down, and I didn't pull this card out in advance, but I'm sure I can find it pretty quickly to show you. I think I always find, well, okay, part of the reason is us, because we have to show that, you know, I can do this. I can lift this heavy object. I can do this thing. But the other piece of it, let me just see if I can find this here. I know I saw it before. You know what it's going to be? It's going to be like the next to the last card that I see. It's going to be like the second card at the top. And because I started from the back here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is. Okay. It's this card. Now, this is interesting because this is their version of the Six of Swords, but it's the burden card. And what do you see here? You see this person who looks absolutely exhausted, and there's this person on their back, you know, sort of almost like cracking the whip and pointing the direction that they have to go. And they're carrying them up a mountain on their back. And what this card really ends up being about is the way in which we carry other people's expectations. And the burden card is also like, see what it's like to not have these characters on your back and to be able to move forward without this. So a lot of times it's not just about, it's about the way in which we feel we need to manage others. And I talked yesterday a little bit about group dynamics and about feeling like you're an outsider. Sometimes we feel we need to take all of this on to be accepted by people. Either accepted because we're good, productive citizens, or accepted because we are because we're proving that we're altruistic in some way, that you know, it's the customer care thing, that, you know, we care about these people. But even within that, I mean, there's a boundary that needs to be set. When you have this level of suppression here, it's like this card implies. This is all of your fire energy, like, being kept inside of you. So this is when you get stomach problems, stomach ulcers. This is when you get bad headaches. This is when your body starts to hurt. This is when you, people who suffer from fibromyalgia, they said, may have had a long pattern of dealing with high levels of stress. Not necessarily, but that's frequently something that happens. And I can just speak from my own experience, is that, yeah, I was somebody who worked 3 jobs for years. There was a time when I would teach in the morning, I would go to my job in the afternoon. At first I was an archivist, and then eventually I was the department head. I would be doing that job, and then I had to go at night and spend 2.5 hours working on my doctorate. Okay, so, and that was just a more recent example. As I remember I was teaching a class in person at Montclair, and I remember these students were like, oh man, I didn't get things done because I'm so busy. And I'm like listening, and I said, so let me tell you what and I know people always hate when you do that. Let me tell you what I do every day. But these students were just kind of like, really? You do all that stuff every day? And I said, time management. You know, time management is part of it. So for the person who has many things that they have to do, a lot of times it's a matter of breaking it down into pieces. Like, you know, saying, okay, I'm just going to do this much today. But a lot of times we look at the big picture, and if we have bursts of energy, we're like, I want to do it all. And again, everybody's energy level is different. I find that if I have a day where I am super motivated, I'm going to do as much as I can in that super motivated day, because I know I will have a day 2 days later where I don't feel like doing anything. And that's the way that I've changed over time, because when I had my driving incident, which I don't want to keep rehashing for people, that was like a moment where the body was just like, stop. And that's why I feel like it's hard for me to move ahead and drive. It's like, stop driving yourself. Stop driving. See, this is the way the body talks to you. Stop driving. You need to slow down. And it's often not just because of your mental health. It also has to do with your physical health, because my physical health suffered a lot. And the only way I can keep myself in balance is if I can keep myself flexible. And if I'm not forcing myself, if I'm not driving, if I'm getting up every day. And the other piece of this, the other key to it too, is that you are doing something that you love. I think I had mentioned that one of my department chairs, when I was an undergraduate, I was a double major. I was English and religious studies. And the religious studies department major, he just passed away, maybe it's been a month now, because I remember I attended the live stream of his funeral, and he was a real character. This guy, it was like he was trained to be a rabbi, but he went to church on Sunday. Like he was like a really, and I don't like I said, I'm never quite sure how he felt about me, but he was a little bit of a curmudgeonly character. So, I don't know, but I did take classes with him. I did learn a lot from him. But I remember there was one day that we were on campus where I went to undergraduate, and then I used to come back and do help with religion department events. They would have lectures and stuff, and they had really interesting lectures. And I would go, and when he was there as one of the lecturers, or he was just there as the department chair, I would help him and the other professors bring stuff in from the parking lot to get things ready in the hall and stuff. I would always do that. I was a pretty active alumna at that point. Not so much anymore, because I don't drive up there anymore. But I do still teach there. But I had been there, and I remember talking with him, because this was the time I was in graduate school. I want to say it was the first time, because I think I was working on my psych and religion master's. Technically the degree is called Religion and Society, and you specialized in something, and I specialized in psych. But I was talking to him about it and about what I wanted to do with that, and he says to me, and I was also talking about some of the other things I was doing. He says, listen, he said, whatever you do, he said, make sure, he says, don't worry about, he says, people who tell you like, oh, you can't do this to me because it's not going to make money or whatever. He says, you find the work that you love and you do it. He says, I graduated from Syracuse. I started working here. He says, and I've never worked a day since. And that was his feeling about it, because he felt like he enjoyed what he did so much that getting up and doing it was not a chore. There was no aspect of it that was a chore, because he for all of his personality quirks, he did enjoy working with students, and he was somebody who legitimately cared about students. So, yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is my little bit of advice on this is people who are carrying a large burden. First of all, reconsider why you're doing it. Some people have no choice. They're in a situation where they're like, yeah, it's all on me. But consider, is there a way to manage your workload better? Are there characters you can shake off your back? Do you, I will get messages from people for my business. I don't respond to all of them. Okay? I respond to some of them, but not to all of them. Because, and most of them, I should say. But if I feel like it's somebody who might be a scammer, if it's somebody who's trying to promote something, trying to do something, I'm like, I don't even bother with those messages, because I'm like, no, I don't want to engage, because the more I engage, the more they're going to assume that I'm interested in some way, or that they can get me interested. That's the way sales works, is they try to keep, if you're nice about it, then they're just like, oh, yeah, haha, and then they just keep going. They don't listen to the fact that you've said that. They're trained not to do that. Or they're a scammer. And my feeling is just like, nope, bye. I don't even give them the time of day, because I know what this is going to get involved in. I don't have to be mean about it, but I can get mean if people don't take no for an answer. I can be like bugger off, But generally speaking, if I feel that, my patrons on my Patreon, yes, those are people I respond to. People who are legitimately reaching out to me for work, yes, those people obviously I will respond to as quickly as I possibly can. And yeah, but people who are kind of coming in from the outside, who are trying to sell me certain things or whatever, frequently, sometimes I will take people up on things, but frequently I don't spend my time on it. So it is a question of, deciding what you're going to spend your energy on, where you're going to focus, okay? And how you can break things down into smaller pieces so that you're not overwhelming yourself every day. There's often an expectation that people are going to do things really fast, and it's like, no, that's not a reasonable expectation, especially when you have a lot going on. You do things at your own pace. Maybe there's, and think about what might be time sensitive, and then say, okay, I'm going to focus, the time sensitive stuff maybe will be my priority. You've got to prioritize. When you're in a 10 of Wands situation, you have to prioritize. If you can't drop the burden, then you have to prioritize. But it definitely suggests the idea that at some point you have to drop the burden. Because there's always the thing of, if you don't do it, the universe does it for you. So if you are going to be putting out a lot of energy into something that you're doing every day, you make sure it's something you're passionate about. And the aspects of every job, there's always an aspect of a job that we're less than crazy about. You find a way to manage that, to break it down. Or sometimes you do need help. Sometimes you do need to suggest, say like, okay, even if that help is feeling some days like you need to vent, or just feeling like you need a day off one day or something. I feel like a lot of times there's a drive to keep going. And people really need to slow down and need to think about that. Anyway, I'm going on about this at length, so I'm going to do the reading for today. And then I will sign off. So let's just see what do our viewers need to know for today. What's the message that we have? What's the thought of the day? The reflection. I have my own shuffling style here. Some people think it's very, very odd, but I always do a side-to-side shuffle because I don't generally work in reversals. And it's the first card that came up. Okay. Excellent reading here. Okay, so yeah, we're back to the 10 of Wands again. Suppression. This card, as it points out, is a suppression of energy. As a card, when you read the meaning of this in its own book, it'll say, make sure that you do anything safe to release that energy, because typically when we are constantly moving at things that are not in line with, that are draining us of our energy, something gives after a while. So it's like, make sure that you do something. Oftentimes this deck will only say, do something unimportant. Do something unimportant, because if you are constantly feeling like you are doing for other people, and you have no space for yourself, you are eventually, you're immortal. You're not an immortal. You're eventually going to break down. Now, what's interesting is our inner feeling. We have another 10. We have the 10 of Swords, and in this deck, this is a Nietzschean thing. This is from Thus Spake Zarathustra, and what you have here is you have a camel, and then you have a lion, and you have a boy. And in the quickest possible terms, what this has to do with is the idea that Nietzsche says people will start out life as a camel, which means a camel being sort of docile and plodding and going along, maybe just going along with the crowd. At some point, they become disillusioned or recognize maybe where they've been taken advantage of or where they're not living their life, and then they start to roar like a lion. Okay, but at some point, the lion stops roaring, and you get to this element of being a child. And the child, so in other words, it's almost like you go back to what you were maybe before the world put its demands on you. Okay, so this is the card of rebirth. So it says whatever's happening. I think for a lot of people this is true. You're moving into a new phase. Like there's something is definitely coming to an end. And the 10 of Swords is like a definite. It's over. It's done. And this is what's going on. So frequently when people are at this point of feeling this way, of feeling this oppressed, it's because something is done. Inside they know it. They may still be reluctant to let go of it. Okay? But our external feeling of which we're aware is the Two of Pentacles. Now this is interesting. This is also a card of change, but it's a card of natural change. It's a natural flow. Okay? It's like usually you see if like the infinity sign, the Leminskit, the figure 8. And this is showing, this card in this deck is the moment-to-moment card. So it's saying, yeah, you need to stay in the present, living in the moment, rather than trying to over-control and over-plan. There's a point at which you need to, or just getting up every day and saying, okay, what's the priority today? Like trying to stay in the present, instead of trying to manage everything and trying to manage people's expectations. It's about going with the natural flow rather than forcing yourself to do as much as you can at once. Like that's an energy that for a lot of people is coming to an end. So we then have the healing card. This is the advice for the day. And healing is literally what it says. This is actually the King of Cups in this deck. And yeah, so there's this idea that you are, letting go. Okay. Kind of the message I'm getting is they're like, okay, you're going through a healing process. And as part of that healing, I feel like, okay, the 10 of Wands energy, the tendency to work can also come from a wound. It can come from feeling like, as I've mentioned before, when we feel cut off, sometimes what we do is we bury ourselves in our work as a means of avoiding the wound. So I think it's saying, at least for some people here who are watching, don't make sure your work is not just a way of covering up the wound and ignoring it, because wounds eventually, if you don't take care of them, they fester, right? And I'm speaking metaphorically, but I mean literally yes, but metaphorically as well. So I think it's saying you need to allow healing in. So yeah, so it's talking about that aspect of overwork, which is the way in which we use it as a distraction from what hurts us. Okay, so this is talking about healing taking place. And yeah, ultimately our outcome card is the Eight of Swords, which in this card is this deck is the card of guilt. Guilt is the Eight of Swords. This is a card of being mentally stuck. And it's interesting, but the guilt thing gets back to what I'm saying about other people's. I'm not a good person if I don't reach out to everybody. If I draw boundaries, then I'm not being a good person. But you are. You need to draw boundaries. You need to say, okay, this is what I can manage and this is what I can't. If people are not willing to negotiate that, then they're free to walk away. Guilt is often comes from scripts that we have where we feel that there's something that we must do in a certain way. I must prove that I'm independent. I must be the person who's everything to everybody. I always have to be the person that everybody likes. I always have to be. That isn't necessarily true, and it's not always going to be true in spite of your best efforts. So I would suggest that this says, you focus on healing, focus on whether or not your work, like I said, if you are buried in something that you absolutely love, then from that perspective, that's not work. It's just something you love doing, and it's your fuel, and it keeps you going every day. If it's something that is even if it's something you do love and you feel like there's something about it you don't love, then you need to actually think about that and where that's taking you. And And good morning. I've just been joined, and I'm actually getting ready to finish up, but I'll just do a quick recap for you since you've. And I'm going to pull one more card. Our theme today was Ten of Wands, like oppression, oppressive energy, burdens, and our first card for today was the suppression card. So which was literally my theme for the day, and this is about the way in which we feel like we have to carry all of these burdens. We have to be independent. I can do it all. I can do it myself, right? But there's this energy here of the Ten of Swords, the idea that something is coming to an end. Okay, that when somebody starts to feel overburdened, it's a sign that something has to end. Okay, and then the external feeling, this is the Two of Pentacles, the moment-to-moment card, which is about going with the flow, natural change, doing things day at a time, rather than having this huge plan with this huge list of tasks that you have to do. It's more of a case of you might have your task list, but you do it, breaking it down a little at a time, going with the flow, and trying to be more in the moment, because really it's more about living life, not about trying to keep yourself busy all the time. And as I pointed out with the healing card, this is often about wounding. A lot of times we work, and show our independence and show our strength, but the strength we're trying to show is because we're trying to not show a wound that we have. Okay, a lot of times that's the case, and ultimately we have this guilt card, the Eight of Swords, because the Eight of Swords means that oftentimes the ways in which we get ourselves mentally stuck and think, well, this is the only way I can do it. And if we try to do it a different way, there's this guilt that comes in, like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing the right thing, I'm not doing what's going to be socially acceptable, I'm not doing, or I'm going to appear weak, or there's going to be something about it where people feel that, and the guilt may just be, they feel that their own inner critic is saying, well, you're doing something wrong here. But you're not. I mean, that's a mental trap. Not to be so cerebral. That's a mental trap that people want to get out of with that. So, so that's the reading for today. I was going to pull a Moonology card as well. And the card that I was going to pull for today, see what wants to come up here. Okay, wow. All right, so I got two cards here. The answers you need are coming. Okay, so that's really very interesting, because for no reason my printer is turning on right now. I don't know why that is, because I might be losing internet. And expect powerful change is the other one. So I'm going to sign off right now because it looks like my internet is resetting itself. Weirdly, I'm still on. Anyway, sorry that you joined late. It's kind of at the end of the thing, but this will be up and available and recorded so that you can rewatch it. And thank you for joining me. And I will be here tomorrow morning. So take care and have a good weekend.